Hello, my name is Janelle. I am the founder of JS Self Care. I am a social worker and a certified life coach. Today, I want to welcome our special guest, Rachel. Rachel, can you please introduce yourself? And if you don't mind, sharing with us your journey to self care?
Hello, yes, my name is Rachel Joi Jackson. I am the owner of Hope's Kitchen Eateries and the Singin Chef LLC. I have had a long journey with self care. I was a child performer, and I was also a victim of different types of child abuse. So my journey started very early as a child.
Well, would you like to start from your singing career as a child and you could get into the abuse and where you're at now would be great.
Yeah, so I started singing when I was about 3 years old. My mother was my manager, as you can say. I always joke and say that she was my Kris Jenner. She started me very early in ballet lessons, even before I started singing. And I was always in ballet lessons with the older children. And eventually, she just noticed that I had a very strong voice. And I started out singing a lot of Aretha Franklin. Respect was a big deal. The song, I remember we had these stairs in our house, and I would pretend that me and Aretha were, doing a concert, and I would just bust out singing the, RESPECT. I would just go hard. And, eventually that evolved over time. My mother discovered more and more that I was very talented. She noticed I was talented in art, talented in speaking, talented with writing. And she kept putting me in art lessons, writing lessons, piano lessons. I started composing music. And eventually my mother started putting me, in addition to the lessons, she started developing me as a gospel artist. I didn't want to be a gospel artist at first. Our family does have a strong ministry background. Um, but eventually, my mother, gave me some slack there, and I started singing more R&B. And around 12 and 14 is when she started actually booking shows. And first it was talent shows, then she started getting me in the studio, and it kind of evolved from there.
Did you like all the things that your mom put you in, all the activities that your mom put you in? Did you enjoy them?
Um, it was very awkward. I didn't have the room to enjoy it. It's hard to, like, I've always loved being creative. I started writing music at 8 years old. I started composing music at 8 years old. I started writing songs at about 11, writing poems at 11. That was fun, but it was more therapeutic. It wasn't, I didn't enjoy being forced because I always felt like my mother's workhorse. I mean, she would literally have this karaoke machine where we would, she would, it just wasn't fun. She would be like, sing Order My Steps, and go higher on this note and be longer on that note. And the older I got as a performer, it got even more strict. I had very little time to have a sound childhood. It went from, making sure that my piano practices were timed and done a specific way to I couldn't relax if I was watching TV. She'd be like, perform that dance routine by Beyonce, do the deja vu dance, and I'd have to perfect, performance styles and performance curations at a moment's notice, and she'd critique it.
Wow. You know what? Just by you saying that reminds me of Michael Jackson, the Jackson family, and Selena. Um, they're great art. They were great artists and amazing singers, but their family was more forcing them to do it, and they forgot to enjoy the enjoyment of it.
Yeah,
Awesome.
that is kind of how it was. I feel like, my childhood didn't have a whole lot. I mean, I didn't have a whole lot of room to be a kid. And if I did, it was influenced by my mother. I feel like as far as getting on stage, I loved it.
Yeah.
But the process before getting on stage, I mean, everything from, what color coordinated outfits were we going to wear? Did we have to take something to the tailor? How was my hair going to be? How many practices before, before the performance, sound checks, it was everything. And I really didn't have a say in what I was going to wear and what I didn't want to wear and she controlled everything. I was just the talent.
Did you ever have the opportunity to play with like Barbie dolls or anything?
Honestly, I did at a young age. In fact, I was kind of spoiled. My grandfather um, made sure I had some time. I used to have these huge, like those like big wash tubs. I used to have
Mm-hmm.
tubs full of dolls, and because I was the beloved child of the family at the same time, so I would get all these dolls, and I would try to play with them, but my mother was always kind of nearby, um, you know, kind of putting her 2 cents in, always trying to put something in my head while I was playing. So I did play. It's just that she oftentimes would interrupt it and, and try to teach me something for my career.
Hmm. So you also said that your mom was controlling. So your mom was a person who controlled the environment, every environment you entered. Is it more like, is that safe to say about your mom?
It is, yes. I had more of the the childhood with my mother where my image, both professionally and personally, was controlled, and I was told what to say to people, what not to say, and unfortunately, I was forced to keep a lot of secrets for her, and it's to the point where my father um, just didn't really know a lot of what was going on. My parents had joint custody, so he lived in California, she lived in Louisiana, and it was two different worlds, and I was taught to keep quiet what was going on with my mother and her controlling behavior. But thankfully, my father, now that I'm an adult, now that I'm being more vocal, which is part of self-care, using my voice and being more vocal, that he's getting to know me and he's getting to know what happened, and it's it's getting us closer. But back then, no, my mother controlled the whole narrative.
Wow. I'm sorry to hear that, Rachel, but I'm so happy that you're on your journey to self care. So, you said the word secrets. You had to keep secrets. Do you mind telling us a little bit about those secrets, those things that happened that you couldn't tell anyone?
Yeah, I would say specifically, and this, not, I'm actually writing a book about this, and this is a whole chapter in the book. I'm writing a book called Chef Diaries, and it's going to be in there. It's a chapter called 12986 Canterbury Drive, and
Wow.
majority of the secrets I had to keep were at that house that we lived. My family has a pretty nice estate, like a huge family plot in Louisiana that has a couple houses, and that was the main family house. But my mother wanted to break away and get her own house, so she did, and that was the house on Canterbury Drive. For her, my mother had some issues. She had some mental health issues that weren't really treated too properly. She also had a drinking problem. So, for her, it maybe looked a little different. For me, that house was a secret. So it would be to the point where, my mother didn't clean. And, so she would like let dishes sit there for like 6 months, and she would have laundry piled up to the ceiling, and she would walk around in her underwear and pass out, and she'd pop a lot of pills, and she just she wouldn't go in certain rooms because of her mental health issues, but I had to go in those rooms, and it was just scary growing up watching someone deteriorate. And she also didn't pay the bills that much. I mean, she went into a lot of debt, and while watching all of the dirty dishes and the laundry, and you had to see a lot of bills piled up that weren't paid, a lot of past due bills, a lot of debt collection bills. um, so it was difficult, and I wasn't allowed to bring anyone in the house either. My neighbor, she was a good friend. Her name was Jada, and she always used to say, "Can I come in your house?" And I would say, "No, my mom doesn't want anybody in the house." And she's like, "Why?" And I'm like, "I just can't." I was just taught to be silent. So anything that went down in that house, I had to keep silent.
Wow. So, do you mind telling us the silent part? What did you have to hold as a child? And probably as a child, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, you didn't even know that you needed to tell someone.
Well, my mother, I I felt like for me as a child, I had a strong love for my mother, and no one ever had the formal discussion with me about my mother's illness. My mother had bipolar disorder with psychotic features, and I knew my mother. I just assumed. I don't know. I don't know. My mother just, she had issues with sexual abuse herself, and she had issues with trauma. And my mother was, she was, I don't know, she would be sexually inappropriate sometimes in an effort to control that narrative, to kind of keep me in check. She touched me, and she would do certain things that were inappropriate. And she would, she was just she didn't like to sleep in the bed by herself. She would always sleep in my bed, and she wouldn't be very close. So, and that eventually grew. In order to retain control, she would give me massages, and she would tickle me. Things that you usually hear men do to little girls, she would do to me. So that was the biggest part of the secrecy. So yeah.
So she suffered from bipolar, and that's one day a person who suffers from bipolar could be amazing, and one day they're like a whole different person, and you're like, what just happened? I just came from school. With that, was one of those people physically abusive? Was she physically abusive or just sexually abusive and emotionally abusive?
No, she was physically abusive. And I think, my mother, she was what you call hypomanic. She was mainly manic a lot. Sometimes she'd have these cycling periods where she would just break down and cry for no reason. But when she was, I don't know if she was maybe high or whatever it was, or drunk, or whatever it was, sometimes she would get a little too hypomanic, more into the mania side, and she'd throw things at me. So she didn't know how to control her anger. So I remember sometimes I'd have to go to school with these really big lumps. I remember one day specifically, I was just minding my business. I wasn't minding my business. I was sitting down watching TV, and she was sitting there, just sitting there normally. She was talking to herself, and I'm very used to that at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And she just threw a high heel shoe at my forehead, and it was perfect aim because like it hit me straight in the forehead, and I had a huge lump on my head, and I didn't know why she did that. She just flashed out for no reason, and she just had this really angry look on her face, and she just walked off. And I would go to school and lie for her. I'm like, they were like, "Is something going on?" I'm like, "Oh no, 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 no." So I was taught very young to conceal
Mm-hmm.
being hit. It was like, "Oh no, 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 I just dropped, or I just fell," you know. So that was a definite thing. But my mother, she also, she would just kind of, if she didn't hit me, she would allow people, like maybe some bullies, to hit me, and she would just not really be helpful. Like I got kicked in the forehead by some bullies when I was younger, and I got beat up pretty bad. I got beat up a lot, honestly. And I was like, "Mom, what are we gonna do about this?" She's like, "Oh, just go to bed. Just go to bed. Don't worry about it." And I'd have black eyes and bloody noses. She wouldn't worry about it.
Wow, Rachel. So you were brought up with what goes on this house stays in this house.
Yeah, no matter how dark it is, no matter how bad it is, you just keep it in the house. And that's, to me, I've learned that that is not healthy, and that's not who I want to be. I don't believe in that bondage. I've learned that I can love my family, I can love uh, people that I grew up around, but when I have to compromise my dignity, it's not okay anymore, and I have to remove myself and speak up.
What was your breakaway from your mom? What broke the camel's back? What made you say enough is enough? How did you get away?
Um, Well, honestly, it started out in a series of things. I just happened to be at a Kendrick Lamar concert one night when I was in college, because this lasted for years. So mind you, I'm a child, and it lasted until I was maybe about, I started around maybe like 19. After my 19th birthday, I went to a Kendrick Lamar concert out of town. And I looked up and I was like, I don't have to go back. Like, I don't have to go back to that house. And I just started walking the streets and trying to find my way. And that happened over and over and over again. And I ended up, being homeless, running away from her. I was in a battered woman shelter. I was staying at people's houses. I was sleeping outside of a McDonald's. I was just, all over the place trying to get away from her. But eventually, and like, I mean, I be in and out because you can only take that for so long before you have to go back to your abuser. And one day I remember it was a friend from college. And at this point, I was staying with a pimp. And his name was Taz. I remember this. And, I remember I was like, well, let me go talk to my friend, my college friend, Jessica. Let me see, if she, so I went to her and I promised her, she was like, I feel like God is telling me to let you move in with me. I don't know what you're into right now. Something's going on with you. You don't have to tell me, but you need to live with me. She didn't know I was staying with a pimp though. And eventually I told her, and she helped me to get on my feet. But then I had, it was hard for me to keep that up. It was hard for me to be on my own. And I eventually landed back at my mom's house again. And then finally I was like, God, I need your help. I can't do this. And I ended up kind of leaning on my grandfather because he had gotten old. And, we started going to our church together, our family church. We started a church called New Jerusalem in Louisiana, and we started going there. And one day, I'll never forget, I was sitting in the pews, and the preacher was like, the blood of Jesus can loose you from the earth. You need to be loosed from the earth. And that spoke to me. It was like a teapot that like was just like steaming, like just hitting a high note. Like the kettle is like almost like just like the top is coming off.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, it's time for me to do something. And I remember I joined the church, and it wasn't just God. It was other people that didn't have a relationship with her. I broke away from her narrative,
Right.
people that didn't know her and people that weren't connected to her that I can get to know from a fresh start. So it would be something as simple as, well, let me get baptized, and then it would be, well, let me in the choir. And at that point, I went from being a R&B singer to being a gospel singer at that point. And I had to learn how to sing gospel and change my style. And I started traveling with that choir. I started traveling with that church, and I started being a star performer. And one day I remember I would go, at that point, me and you had talked about it. I was also losing weight
Mm-hmm.
because all that stuff that I went through, child, I got heavy. I was over 300 pounds because I was eating at her.
Yeah.
That was
Emotionally eating.
controlling that. Yeah. It was my way of controlling it. And I remember I would go jogging on the levee. They say, don't go by the levee, all the country folks,
Can
don't go by the levee, don't get killed over there.
Can you tell us what the levy is?
So for y'all who don't know, a levee in Louisiana, especially where we was at, the Mississippi River can basically flood a neighborhood, especially during certain times of the year. So there are man-made long, almost like a long hill, like a wall. It's a hill that's made like a wall, and it's made out of cement and grass and dirt. And they build it up to block the Mississippi River from flooding neighborhoods. And the old legend in in the neighborhood is, don't you go up to that levee. People get on that levee and they don't come back. And I was like, all right, whatever. So, but because I didn't care at that point, I was like, I need to do something healthy with my body. I need to use the strength. Like at that point, I'm around people at the church. I'm making friends. I'm I'm finally enjoying my singing. That was the main thing. I was never happy
Right.
singing what she wanted me to sing. And that's why I eventually started singing nothing but sad songs. I sang a lot of Mary J. Blige. I sang a lot of Keisha Cole. I sang a lot of, sad songs. And when I started singing gospel, I was happy.
Wow.
I was happy. And it wasn't like a religious thing. It was because I felt heard for the first time. Having my voice being heard is the most important and therapeutic part of my journey, because there's a difference between seeking attention and being heard.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what I was doing with eating out at my mother and getting fat. That's what I was doing, when I was, maybe dating the wrong guy, because I eventually started dating toxic men.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I was doing by, just acting out. And being heard was when I could be quiet on, maybe in the choir stand and stand before the mic and just sing in unison with somebody else. And I'm just being one among, and I'm just heard.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you hear me, there's no drama, and then eventually, it just kind of grew. But to also answer your question, I got on the levee,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember I prayed, and it was a beautiful, beautiful day. I'll never forget that. It was beautiful sky. And I looked up and I felt like God was saying, I'm getting ready to take you out of here. And I'm like, "Whew, Lord, it's been about 20 years now." Like, at this point, I was 20. I was like, "It's been about 20 years, Lord. I don't know about all that. I mean, you the Lord, so I understand all that, but I'm just saying." And he's like, "I got you." So I remember I forgot what it was called, but it was a missionary. I called some kind of hotline, and this missionary named Theron Babin, he picked up the phone. He was a gay guy. I remember that. So, and I remember I was talking about my family, and I was like, "Oh my God, my mom, she's treating me this way. I can't take this. This is too much." And he's like, "I understand. I have a family like that." And I told him about my journey, about being homeless and about the struggles. And, he was like, "Well, I'm the owner of a halfway house in a different city." At the time, I was living in San Gabriel, Louisiana, because my mother had eventually lost the house and we had to go back to San Gabriel. And he was in Baton Rouge. And I remember he was like, "If you like, I could come pick you up, show you the house. It's in a beautiful neighborhood called the Garden District, and we can move you in today." And I was like, "Well, how much is it going to cost? All I got is $50. He's like, "Don't worry about it. I'm not expecting that of you. I just want to take you out of that because it sounds like you're not in a safe place." And I remember he picked me up and he changed my life in like 2 days. And he taught me how to get a job. He taught me how to pay rent. He taught me how to be independent. And it built on what I was already building. I went from having my voice heard to getting my needs met to standing up for something.
Absolutely. Now let's fast forward a little bit. So now you're an adult.
Hmm.
You learned how to pay your bills. You
Yes.
learned how to take care of yourself. You
Hmm.
found your voice because when Rachel speaks, she is going to be heard. And it's
Yeah.
no more secrets because you tell your story. So it's nothing bottled up in you anymore. What happens? Because now you're in Poughkeepsie from Louisiana on the levee to get in God's word. I mean, on the levee. So we must let the audience know that she is alive, and
Yes.
I don't recommend anybody else going on the levee. I never saw it, but I am not going to promote going on a levee to pray because it could be dangerous.
Yeah.
God actually had Rachel in his arms and he was literally holding her up. So now you're in Poughkeepsie and you're a singing chef and you're doing all these amazing things. Can you tell us a little bit about what that journey from being saved to all the way now looks like?
It was all connected. It all started with learning my voice and finding my voice and being heard. I started learning the key was turning my pain into my prosperity
Mm-hmm.
and learning what prosperity really was. And I think we learned that prosperity is just getting money and being flashy. And it's like, no, prosperity is rooted in positivity. and its peace of mind and its growth, and it can be monetarily, and for me it has been monetarily, but it's so much to that. So I remember, I started an initiative called Homeless Hopes, because through my weight loss journey I ended up losing 145 pounds. And I remember I was like, I want to feed the homeless, I want to help them, with their nutrition stuff. And then eventually I turned Homeless Hopes into Hope's Kitchen, and then Hope's Kitchen turned into Hope's Kitchen Eateries. And I started that like right around the same time I left my mom's house.
Wow.
So that, yeah,
You went
it
to
was a
work
while.
as soon as you
Yeah, I
left.
did.
It
Yeah,
was
I did.
like, I can't rest. I got things to do.
Yeah, I got things to do. I've been held back too
That,
long. Yes, ma'am.
yes. And these things are not controlled. The only person in control of these things were you.
Exactly. And I loved it because it was inspired by my parents. My parents, my mother's Creole French and my father is Nigerian. He's from the Igbo tribe. So I got inspired by their international relationship and their international ways of cooking. So Hope's Kitchen focused around a lot of international foods. And then, I tell people all the time, I started selling plates at hair salons. My voice is going to be heard somewhere.
That's
So
right.
yeah, let me sell these plates. But here's my thing. I sold gourmet plates. I sold these like gourmet salads and these gourmet Italian and all this type of stuff at plate prices. Stuff that you would get at like a 5-star restaurant in a salon at a salon price. So I was like, cool, just to get heard. And I made good money. I made some good money. And I didn't have to do a lot of prep. I just showed up and I started learning my sales pitches. And then that turned into private chef work. And then private chef work turned into pop-up shops, and pop-up shops turned into festivals, and festivals turned into having my own delivery-only restaurant on the Waiter app in Louisiana. Um, and then through that process, I got accepted into about 3 culinary schools. I got accepted into the Louisiana Culinary Institute. I got accepted into the Art Institute of Houston. But the ultimate one, which I obviously took, was which was the Culinary Institute of America in Hyde Park, New York, and it was the best deal because not only did they offer me acceptance, they offered me over $21,000 worth of scholarships, and they also offered me a merit award and an alumni referral award, and it was for Hope's Kitchen. They were so impressed with Hope's Kitchen. And that's actually the same time that I started the Singing Chef, because I was going on all these churches. I was still singing. I was still singing for the Lord.
Thank
But I learned real quick they will turn that out. They had me singing for free. And I was like, oh no, I can't. I'm too professional. I've been singing too long. Because I was doing
Yeah.
full-fledged concerts, for
Wow.
people for free. And I was like,
Wow.
so I was started charging, and that's how the Singing Chef became a thing. And I obviously came to New York, and I went to the CIA. But when I got to the CIA, I learned I know a lot of this stuff already, and the tuition's expensive.
Hmm.
So yes, very
Very
much so. So
expensive.
I joined the American Culinary Federation as a professional culinarian, and I started fighting for social justice. I started fighting. It was around the time last year when George Floyd was killed and Breonna Taylor was killed, that I started, speaking up and doing interviews and publicizing and doing ads on culinary systemic racism. And it got all the way to the national president, Chef DeCambra. And they were like, well, what do you want? You can't keep putting these ads out. You can't keep airing out our laundry, pretty much. I was like, you got to end
Hmm.
this. You have the power within the industry to end this systemic racism. And it ended up being where they did do some inclusivity things, and they did do a campaign, but it backfired because they ended up firing the national president that endorsed it. So I was like, well, fine, I'm not about to be in the ACF. Fine, I'm gonna go out and do my own thing. And it worked out because now I have my book, Chef Diaries, coming out. I have my food inspired artwork on my website that talks about my struggles with systemic racism, in the industry. I have a concert coming out. I have an album coming out. So everything worked out.
Wow. So, Rachel, you've been promoting that you are a
Yeah.
singer. Would you mind singing for us? Or if you could leave the audience with any advice, what would you say? Or sing?
I'll sing a little song. I'll sing a little song.
Thank you. I am super. Y'all, we have a single on the JS Self Care Mind, Body, and Soul podcast. Make sure you guys tune in, and we will make sure everyone gets Rachel's contact, but she's gonna sing for
Yes,
us
I'm gonna sing
first.
some real quick. It's kind of the introduction in my book, so it's also a sneak peek in the book. So I'm gonna just sing it. Lord, I hear of showers of blessings. Thou art scattering full and free. Shall the thirsty souls refreshing? Let some drops now fall on me.
Thank you. Oh my God, you are an amazing singer. And as soon as that book come out, please let us know. But Rachel, how can, if someone wants a gourmet meal, if someone wants to contact you, how would they be able to contact you?
Yes, so actually, I'm glad you asked me that. I actually have, if you want to get in touch with me, if you're in the Poughkeepsie area, all you have to do, I have a little thing here. You have to text good food, that's GOODFOOD, good food, to 844-751-0835. And it's going to start the process, and it's going to give you a number to call, which is the official Hope's Kitchen Eateries hotline and number. And all you have to do is press extension 3 and you can place an order.
And do you have a
I do,
website?
yes. Let me see. I don't know it by heart, but if you go to yeah, because it's not like traditional. But if you go to thesinginchef.com, that's the best way to get in contact with me and to find out more about me and what I'm doing. Or if you go to Hope's Kitchen Eateries on Instagram, you can find the website there for the actual food.
So she is on Instagram. What about Facebook? Are you on
Yes.
Facebook, or most of your traction
No,
is on
actually, you
Instagram?
can find me on the Singin Chef on Facebook, and singin, because people think it's singing and singin. So SINGIN, the Singin Chef on Facebook. I also have I Am the Singin Chef on Instagram. And that's everything that's art related, music related, my book, all that's going to be under the Singin Chef. But if you want food, you got to either text good food to that number, or you go to Hope's Kitchen Eateries Instagram and you go to the website on there.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, Rachel, for sharing your story, because your story can help someone, and it's your truth, and it's your journey to self-care, and you made it off the levee. You have an album coming out. You building your business. You're an amazing person, and hopefully one day you and I can meet
Yes.
in person. Thank you,
Thank you so
Rachel.
much.